What's going on, everyone? It is your boy Thriller here, and we're here with a tier list video. Another one, but this one, we're breaking out the big guns, ladies and gentlemen. We are breaking out the Pokemon main series games. We have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. Now, every one of these is a mainline game, and is one of the mainline games you will always play. Now, obviously, side games have not been included, but if I was, I would put XD in S tier because that is childhood, and I will never forget that. I will put both stadium games in B tier because they're fun games, but they're not the greatest. Conquest, that goes in D. I hate that game. Dungeon games, I'll put them in D because I've never played them. And probably any other spin-off game that I can think of just goes in D. Except Pokemon Snap. That one's a C, and then Pokemon Snap 2 can go in B, because I actually like how the game looks. But we're going to talk about the main generation games, man. And this goes from, like, the OGs to the remakes to everything in between. So, if you guys are hyped, leave a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Join the Thrill Crew today, because you'll be thrilling with the King of the Crew. I'll link it to my description here. We'll let you know about the tier list, so you can make your own tier list and videos on this as well. And oh boy, let the controversy begin. So, with this being said, I'm going to just get rid of these just because no one wants to see that. Let's do that. Boom. So, let's talk about these games. So, I have pretty much played every single one of these games except for 3 of them. So that will play a factor into potentially, my thought process. So let's talk about those games I have never played. The first game that I've never played is Pokemon Yellow. I have never played Pokemon Yellow. Now, Pokemon Yellow obviously is the same thing as Red and Blue, but it has a different nostalgic feel towards it, where Yellow actually came out before Red and Blue. No, my bad. Excuse me. Came out after Red and Blue. So, it didn't have that same nostalgia feeling as Red and Blue did for a lot of people. But Yellow is one of the most iconic Pokemon games, as it was one of the very first early games ever released in America. So, with that respect in mind, and the fact that it is a Gen 1 title, I'm going to put that in B tier just because I want to give it the respect it deserves. I've never played for Yellow. I don't know if Yellow's basically the same levels as Red and Blue. I don't know. But just for me personally, Yellow is going to go B tier. The next game I haven't played is Crystal, which is basically a combined version of Gold and Silver, essentially, but you get to catch your Suicune in part of the main games. And like I said, I've never really beaten Gold and Silver. I have played through them. I got into at least Gym 3, but that's it. Never beat them, so that's, I guess you could factor that in, I guess, maybe, but it's a game. It's probably fun. It's really great. I think it's the same thing with B. I'm gonna put it in B tier, just again for the keeping the nostalgia from when Crystal came out with that iconic intro with Suicune and Unknown. That was dope, and we're just gonna go for that. And speaking of that, I think I'm gonna put Gold and Silver in B tier as well. Again, games that I've never finished. I think when you finish a game, it adds a lot more character and a lot more depth towards it, and I think processors in a lot more of something that you see with. So that's just my thoughts and opinion. Excuse me. So the next games we have never played before are actually Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. I have never played these games, and out of all the games, these two I've never played at least. This one I have partially but never finished. I've never played these games, and these are the only games I've been actually trying to look out for and try to play for the longest time. Even though I played the remakes, I never played the OGs. So I'm going to, out of respect for what these games did, because these were when games started stepping up in terms of designs, adding more Pokemon, kind of having a bit of a cool story background, cool teams, but more importantly, some of the most powerful legendaries out there. So out of respect for that, I will put that in C tier, and I'm actually going to put Emerald in A. Emerald is probably one of the most successful sold copy games out there of a Pokemon game ever, in my opinion. Like, this is one of the games that I think anyone and everyone replays every single time. And I think it's one is the definitive Gen 3 title for Gen 3 games of the earlier generations of it before the remakes came out. Now, we're going to talk about these games that I have played, I have beaten by a technicality, and beaten. So, let's first start off with Generation 1. First, Let's Go. And I'm going to say this right now, Let's Go is not that bad. Is it still bad? Yes, but it's not as bad as I think some people, John Jr., make it look out to sound be when Pokemon Go is a thing. I think I love what Let's Go did. It made Pokemon Go mechanics fun, and I think for younger kids, like for example, my future nieces and nephews that I could probably get in the future with my sisters, who knows? But basically, you get what I'm saying. A small kid that's never played Pokemon and wants to get into gaming, you introduce this type of a game to them. It's pocket monster creatures that they can start getting plushies for, the games for. It's such a great thing. But I will say it's still not as entertaining when you literally have to do the level up system as catching Pokemon versus the traditional battling. So for that, I will at least put this. Excuse me. Oh my god. Put this as a C. I will at least put a C. I will say we're probably not going to use D at all, except maybe one game. We'll talk about that game in a second, obviously. But overall, I don't think these games are as bad as a lot of people saying. And if we ever do get a Let's Go Johto, I'm down for it. I'll play it, and I'll try to enjoy it, and enjoy a different experience of Johto for this style. Now, we're going to talk about the very first time I ever played a main series Pokemon game. I want you all to know, back in before 2010 or right at 2010, it was one of those two. I'd never played a main series Pokemon game. I'm being dead serious. I've never, ever played one back in that time. And the thing is, when Red and Blue dropped, that was the year I was born in 1996 specific. Because that's what it is. I was born when Pokemon became a reality in some way. So the fact that I never grew up with any of the main series games, I was always with the side games. I've never been introduced to the main series. I was never watching YouTube to watch the main series. I always watched the side stuff. I never saw this stuff. And when a friend introduced me to a video game club that we had, where we get to play video games and card games and stuff after school, he introduced me to this game, and I think I got to at least the first or second gym, and he had to take his game back. But after that moment, I got addicted, and I got to play it. I had to beat this game and play this game, and that's when Fire Red and Leaf Green became my first games. Of course, Team Fire Red, as always. And I think for the nostalgia, being my first main series game, is the fact that it was also Gen 1, which I think was poetic justice. That's how I get introduced. Just for the nostalgia reasons, I'm going to put this game in S tier. Just for the nostalgia of, the first time you ever play a Pokemon game that's from the main series, and you've just now started playing them, and your first experience is from Gen 1, I think you cannot beat a nostalgia feeling like that. Same can be said for Red and Blue, and I honest to God loved Red and Blue, but I will put Red and Blue in A tier, just because, again, they were the OG games that were made before this, and I never played Red and Blue until, again, later on when 3DSs allowed you to play Red and Blue on their cartridges, and that's how I was able to play Red and Blue. And for a first time playing through the old school version of them, they were actually a lot of fun. A little bit more annoying, a little bit more longer than I was wanting them to be, but overall, loved these games. Gen 1 easily takes it. Probably for me is one of the top 5 best gens, hands down. And I think, everyone would probably read it at least in the top 5, but being number 5, or maybe even number 4. But this to me is just, you can't beat nostalgia when you're a kid, man. Now, we come into the Gen 2 era, which is Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and I will say this right now. Johto is the worst generation ever. Gen 2 sucks. It has a cool bangers in there with Scizor, Heracross, Tyranitar, Kingdra, just to name a few, and some cool characters. But at the end of the day, the game sucks. Be granted, it's got a cool follow system with the Pokemon, which is something we've always been wanting. We finally got that back in Generation 9 and Generation 8, which is awesome. But these games, bad level up system, like you're just replaying for Gen 1 for a post game, which don't get me wrong, a fantastic post game idea, don't get me wrong. But overall just not great. And I'm gonna have to put this in the B tier. I respect what Heart Gold and Soul Silver did and what they provided for gaming and stuff like that. But just for me, it's just I am kind of ranking these as I go, by the way. So these games are going to be obviously put to the side, probably near the dead last end of it, just because that's just, again, games that never finished or played. So be granted with that. Same thing with this one. But I mean, I respect these games. I like these games. Team Soul Silver, by the way, and but just overall, I just don't think they're that good. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the second 3DS title games in the series when they started to go into a bigger 3D picture for Pokemon games. Very revolutionary. Was the big start besides Gen 6 was these games were the biggest starts to the Draft League scene. And out of the respect of what it did and out of the respect I have for this game, like I was able to experience both not only Gen 3 games but a partial entry of Gen 3s with Rayquaza and Deoxys, which was really, really dope. So, because you got to incorporate everything, and that includes DLCs, which we'll talk about with Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield, because those had DLCs. I think these games, for what they offered and what they did, deserve A, and I'm willing to put them above Red and Blue. I think what they did to revolutionize not only Wi-Fi battling, but also the fact that we had new Megas, we had really good updated graphics, and just overall, just amazing. Just like, if you're Gen 3 fans, this was the best love letter that Gen 3 got, which was insane. Now we get to Gen 4. Now, I actually never beat Diamond, but I played for the majority of Diamond. So I'm going to put that in B tier for that specific reason. And I'll put it right behind, actually, this, because I never beat it, but it was one of the ones I played the most out of it. This is no question. This is no debate. Easily, and I will say this right now, my favorite gen and my favorite Pokemon game, which one game actually almost beat this one. And there's actually maybe there was two. But this one was damn near close to beating this one, but I can't let anything beat Platinum. Platinum for me is the most Pokemon game I have not only beaten, restarted, beaten, restart, beaten, restart, beaten, restart. I have beaten this game probably around 20 times in my entire life as a kid. This has so much nostalgia. Some of the best music, some of the best Pokemon designs, some of the best story, and again, one of the best champions that we were ever granted with. Wait, what's that? Piano! Okay, I'm just hearing this. But this game was revolutionary. I wish Diamond and Pearl wasn't slow when it came to that thing, because then Diamond and Pearl would be sharing this spot with it. But Diamond and Pearl had its problem. And plus, I was stupid and didn't know where to go in Diamond and Pearl. But Platinum's story was so much better. The pacing of the game was so much better. And everything about it was just amazing. I absolutely love it. And to this day, it's my favorite Pokemon game. And it's arguably my favorite game of all time. Just because of so much nostalgia I have with this game. Now we get to Gen 5. Now, I think both games, in terms of story, were great. Pokemon, amazing, because they're literally the same thing. Black 2 and White 2, in my opinion, are more fun games to Nuzlocke because there's a lot of diversity of Pokemon. Whereas I love the OGs of them, which these aren't remakes, they're just the second installments basically. But the OG ones of these primarily used only the new Pokemon so you can get used to them, which I think was a game thing you never saw. Like, Gen 3 did this, obviously, for the majority of the Pokemon that we got, but we didn't get that again until Gen 5. And then we really didn't get that again until Gen 7. And then we really didn't get that again until Gen 9. What's with the odd numbers getting all the rules in here? Why does it have to be odd? Why can't it be even? I'll see myself out. But But these games were really awesome, man. Some great stories, some great characters. Some of probably the best Pokemon, the second best decks in the entirety of Pokemon, and it's not close. Even argued to be the best decks in Pokemon to this day, which is a fair claim. And for that, I would say I'm gonna probably put Black 2 and White 2 probably in B. They're fun games to Nuzlocke. I enjoy them, but if I had to pick a game that made more of a breakout than it did, it's this. And I'm gonna put this actually in A tier, and I'm gonna probably put this right behind Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. I think again with what Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire provided and offered, it adds a bit more of like a bigger impact than Black and White 2 did. But I could also tie them because they're both so good that it's hard to pick a winner between the two. But Black 2 and White 2, I like more in terms of being more challenging, where you can Nuzlocke it. But I love overall the OG White and Black because it's really, really great. It's amazing. And I just love the music in this game. It's a fantastic banger. Gen 6, arguably the worst or second worst generation of Pokemon. Some of the Pokemon we got were cool, were awesome, but they really dropped the ball on some things, and the pacing in this game sucks, and it's not that fun. We had no information about Diancie, we had no information about Hoopa, we had no information about Volcania, no information besides Zygarde, it's seeing him in a giant random cave and being parts of the episodes in the anime. Now with Legend Za coming out either late 2025, early 2025, or possibly coming out this year, which I highly doubt they would be. Let's be honest, they shouldn't. But with more story emphasis, it could make the X and Y titles a lot better. But for right now, I'm going to put this in C, and I will put it above Let's Go, so John doesn't have to worry about stressing about me saying Let's Go is better than this. I actually did enjoy playing through X and Y. Again, the first 3D Pokemon experience, but overall the game for me, it really kind of fell off. And over the years, it's kind of one of those games that's a little hard to replay. It's a lot more fun to replay as like if you're doing like Wonder Trades and stuff like that with it. But other than that, it's just not as fun as you want it to be. Now we get into big game changers here. Going to Hawaii in the Alola region. Both of these games, fantastic. But I definitely think this time around, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon really stepped it up. They really stepped it up from this one. And this is how, if you make a sequel to a game, that you really step it up. I personally think Black 2 and White 2 sequel was lower than the originals. That's why they're ranked that way. This time around, I'm doing this again, where I'm going to put these up here, and I'm going to put these down here. And I'm going to probably say I like Sun and Moon more than Black and 2 and White 2. Just barely, though. Because of the OG story with Luzumi and, that cool fight. These, I'm going to probably put them right in front of Omega. Just slightly because of the story, the Pokemon, and overall just, like, the Necrozma boss fight. The Ultra Wormhole area and stuff. Like, everything about Ultra Sun and Moon was amazing. There was barely any flaws with the game that I think that you can't really argue and say that. Same can be said with regular Sun and Moon, but just missing like a few things. And plus, the post game for this game was actually a really cool treat because again, Giovanni, former captains that you face throughout the other generations from Gen 2 and onward, man, it's freaking amazing. Just fantastic post-game story. Absolutely love it. And that's another thing about some of these games. Some of these post-games are really kind of lame and not really that great. And speaking of Gen 4, let's talk about some of the other Gen 4 games before we get into the big two meat and potato ones here. So, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I'm not going to put them in D. Now, I will acknowledge that they were lackluster games. They were lackluster because there wasn't no pizzazz. There was some cool graphics, and it was a love letter to Sinnoh and to all the Gen 4 fans to be basically reimagined into your DS on a Switch. I loved that idea, but we all were expecting the big graphics. If this game got the graphics of like Sword and Shield, or how Scarlet and Violet were going to look like, this would probably be the best Pokemon game in the entirety of Pokemon itself. But unfortunately, it's not. And I'm going to have to unfortunately put it in C tier. And I'm going to put it. Should I cause controversy? No, I shouldn't do that. Or should I? Nah, I'll put it there. I won't say it's better than X and Y. X and Y at least had its own uniqueness towards it, so I gotta give it respect. But I still like these games, and I plan to give one of these games to my nephew when he gets older, so that way he can grow up loving Gen 4, and that way he can be able to enjoy a Gen 4 experience for a different art style, for a different way. Then obviously I'll still probably maybe get him the original ones for at least Platinum. But if they had just made this Platinum, man, this would have been so much more enjoyable. And this would probably would have been an A1 game. 100% A. And now we have another S tier game. And probably the second best game as of right now. When you take the idea of having Zelda mixed in with Pokemon, you just created probably the most genius idea, and you're that person that got a raise from Nintendo and Game Freak to have done this concept. From taking not a standard Pokemon battling to then like a freestyle offensive approach with just smacking Pokemon with Pokeballs to then just having a really cool story, custom form Pokemon, well not custom form, but basically different form Pokemon, and just overall an amazingly new way to look at how Sinnoh came to be from the past. Like that was so dope, man, and everything about it is just amazing. The only thing that sucks about this game is no replay value. I've not touched it ever since I stopped playing it. And when it comes to replay value, I never replayed this game to try out any of the other starters. Never. If I played for that game, I was only playing for it just to use shinies, and that was it. After that, I just didn't care anymore. But that first time experience, like I literally played for the entirety of the game, or at least 95% of the game, on release. Like that's how much I played this game. And for one, Gen 4 is so addicting to me. I love Gen 4. So it was just an amazing game. Now we get to the two ones, the recent entries into the series. Sword and Shield, which has had such a big mixed reception as of right now. When the games came out, banger video games. 100%. Later on, before DLCs, glitches and graphics were coming out as a problem. DLCs dropped. First DLC was okay, had its goodness towards it, but when the second DLC dropped, it was a banger of a DLC. Got some of the old favorites and really cool ways to interact with the legendary Pokemon, which was awesome. Amazing custom form Pokemon that we saw, and like Galar, Slowking, the birds. It was just and then the return from I think this was from the Isle of Armor. I could be wrong about that. But or if it was the Crown Tundra, it was one or the other. The return of Pokemon following you and seeing Pokemon like Suicune walk on water and some of the Pokemon swimming in water. That was such a highlighted moment seeing that, and it really helped set the bar for an aesthetic aspect of it. The battling was really cool. The battling, however, did suck because that was when the timer nerf happened, and it tripled Draft League to an extent, and it really, really took some of the major players out of it, which was really, really bad. Like after Gen 8, people like Dan, aka A-Drive, retired. I think that's pretty much it. People like maybe Gator possibly. I don't know if he was still in it. Chimpact, they all retired. But it was one of those things where the game started off so well, had one DLC which was okay, one DLC that was amazing, but just overall, game is fine. Dynamax was okay. It had its moments. I was able to 6-0 someone because of Dynamax, so yeah, that proves if it's not broken or not. I overall felt like these games were great, and they were really fun games. Like, I love the story. Zashi and Zamazenta are awesome looking Pokemon as well. Like, the way you interacted with them the first time to then now, and their shinies are absolutely beautiful. So I am willing to put them up in A tier. I will probably put them behind Sun and Moon and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but I really think these games are really great. Some of the best designed Pokemon we also got from this game too. And a decent game that had a decent amount of fairly new Pokemon that we had. So maybe not all the odd numbers had to. Maybe they had one even number to get it right. But overall, love these games. That kind of sucks is I haven't been able to replay them a lot. There's actually a lot to do to replay them quite a bit. So replay value definitely hurt. But I think overall they're great games. Scarlet and Violet. I don't care what you people say. S tier game. 100%. I have no regrets in saying this. S tier game. I acknowledge the tech problems, glitches, and possible software errors that happen with this game. I understand all of those nitpicky problems with it. But let me tell you something. Name a Pokemon game that has probably the best story of a Pokemon game and probably the best ending to a Pokemon game that you've ever expected. Name a Pokemon game that doesn't have the best forms of Pokemon / new Pokemon like the Paradox Pokemons that we saw. Name a game that had introduced really cool new Legendary Trio along with a Legendary Pokemon, and not one, but 2 DLCs, even though they kind of did that with the other ones, but you get one point. But also, give us 2 DLCs that both were amazing for their own reasons. First DLC actually had a really great story. Oh wait, never mind. Not just 2 DLCs, 3 DLCs! Where the TL Mask, really cool story background of like a Japanese culture, and also relating that this was related to Unova as well, which was really cool. Just overall amazing, just Pokemon, and then the Teal Mask, not Teal Mask, the Indigo Disc, a little bit downgraded, but still like amazing exploration, amazing Pokemon, amazing returning Pokemon that we got, and then of course the fight with the giant turtle. And Kieran's villain arc and Hydrapple being dope as heck, by the way. But then name another game that had a 3rd DLC as an epilogue. Be granted, it was only about 1 Pokemon and it was only like an hour long, but it was still a very fun-filled hour. And Pecharunt is actually a really cool thing. So, with that being said, this is an S tier game. Everything about it, from the Pokemon, the music, the story, the characters, the DLCs, to everything, even to the Wi-Fi, where the timer returned. Because if the timer didn't return, this definitely would have been an A or B tier game. 100% I would say that from a competitive standpoint. But this is an S tier game, and this I had decided very much on this, and this is now officially my second favorite Pokemon game, right behind Pokemon Platinum. You can say all the hate you want about this game. I won't care. It is a game that I've actually replayed several times, which has decent enough replay value. But this game, absolutely love it. It's a gem. I'm hoping if we ever get a Gen 10, we don't run into the same issues as Gen 9 did. Because if we get Gen 10 with the similar style of the Gen 9 graphics and Pokemon, and there's no problems with it, we will have the perfect Pokemon game. Because Gen 9 was literally a small fraction away from becoming the perfect Pokemon game, if not the best Pokemon game of all time. But just barely missed that mark. Just barely. But yeah, this is my list. And let me know your thoughts about the list. I know a lot of you are going to say I'm completely wrong, and I have hot takes galore. But these are my rankings from best to worst in their own respective tier. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time, guys. Peace.